Hi, we're on Charing Cross Road, and at the corner of Charing Cross Road and Denmark Street. We can look at the street sign behind me. That's Denmark Street. Denmark Street at the turn of the century turned into a lot of publishing houses. So it became known as the Tin Pan Alley, London's Tin Pan Alley. Lionel Bart, who wrote Oliver, was called the king of Denmark Street. That was in the 50s and 60s. Now, as the Beatles became popular and started writing their own music, publishing houses started becoming less successful, right? Because these were houses full of songwriters and song pluggers trying to get their songs heard. But a lot of them built recording studios into their offices so that they could do demos. They were small studios. They weren't really intended to be anything that somebody would really use too much. But behind me is Regent Sound Studios, and they have a big history. Their studios ended up being used by the Rolling Stones, Jimi Hendrix, The Who, the Yardbirds, the Kinks, David Bowie. All these people worked here, generally doing demos or rehearsing, but the Rolling Stones recorded their very first album here, part of their second, and an extended play record as well. The attraction was that it was old and it was less expensive. So as Keith Richard put it, there were stains on top of the stains, so you could be relaxed, you could drink, you could do whatever you wanted and get the sound you wanted because you didn't have engineers telling you what you were supposed to do. Now on the first or second floor, there's a company called Hipgnosis, Hipgnosis, hip for hip and then gnosis meaning knowing. They were a design company. They designed record albums for Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, Paul McCartney and Wings during the 1970s. If you had an album coming out, they were probably going to be the ones who were designing it. Their famous, probably the most famous album cover was Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon, but they did Wish You Were Here, Animals, a lot of those other things. So this was an important spot here. There was a real hotbed of activity here at Regent Sound. Next door to it, number 5, were the offices of New Musical Express. That was one of the important early trade magazines in the 1960s in England. And next to that, number 6, has a slightly different history. That actually was a place where there was a cottage out back of number 6 that became the home of the Sex Pistols, and Sid Vicious carved artwork into the walls. And as a result, it's been named a historical spot, and you can actually rent the room, spend the night. It's got plexiglass around the walls, so you can't do anything to it. But number 6, kind of a notorious history, but it's interesting history nonetheless. So we're going to walk up to number 9, Denmark Street. It's the site of the old Gioconda Cafe. A lot of the stars frequented this place, the Rolling Stones, all of those London bands. David Bowie hung out here and is said to have formed his first band here at number 9 Denmark Street, the Gioconda. And I got to speak with some of the Regent Sound guys. It's a music shop now, but they know the history. And they talked about how David Bowie used to come down here and live out of an ambulance so that if anybody needed a musician or if he could get involved in any recording sessions, this was before he was famous, that he'd be right here in the middle of the scene ready to go to work. And then finally we're going to walk up to number 11 Denmark Street. That was housed the offices of Melody Maker. That was another important trade magazine. So you can see that a lot of important things were going on this street. It was a hotbed of creativity. There were people that were working with and around each other that inspired each other. In fact, we're moving to number 20, which is on the opposite side of the street, which I believe was where Dick James may have moved his publishing offices because Elton John and Bernie Taupin worked for him. And number 20 here is where they wrote their first hit song called Your Song. You've probably heard it. If you haven't, it's pretty ubiquitous, easy to find. So this became, again, this hotbed of the British invasion. So when it starts as Tin Pan Alley, doesn't have as much impact on American popular music, but during the 1960s, this became a place where the British invasion bands converged and worked and talked, inspired, and the British invasion would have looked rather different without Denmark Street. Thank you.